What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Real Bodybuilding Podcast. This is a solo Q&A, and I got about 100 questions here on my Instagram to go through. I'm going to try and get to as many as possible in the hour. And I wanted to say that, like always, I'm not a guru. I'm not an expert. This is just my 25 years of bodybuilding knowledge, and I'm going to give you guys as much of it as I can from my own experiences and hope it helps you guys out. I'm going to get right to it. There is a bunch of questions in here about Derek doing Pittsburgh, so I'm going to cover that first, and then we'll get to the rest. That's kind of the big news in bodybuilding right now, and I think it is big news. And I have to commend Derek for making that decision. I think it's awesome. I think there was an era, my era, primarily, I think, where a lot of bodybuilders, especially top bodybuilders, only competed once or twice a year. And the prevailing thought at the time from fans was, how do we get these guys to compete more? We want to see the best bodybuilders compete more often. And it was a big deal. Like, a lot of people complained about it. The IFBB tried to implement ideas to get bodybuilders to compete more. And now we're getting that. And I think, some people are out there complaining, oh, he shouldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's not good for him. I think it's awesome for the sport. And I think it's a huge pat on the back to Derek. Is it going to mean that he's not as good in October at the Olympia? Potentially, but I don't think so. Derek is a consummate professional. Derek doesn't get far out of shape in the off season. Derek also doesn't have to really put on a ton more size at all to be great. So I don't think he needs a long off season. I don't think he's going to get way out of shape to where it's going to be hard for him to get back in shape. I think this is just another opportunity for him to cement a legacy as a great bodybuilder. And I think great bodybuilders compete often. Great bodybuilders win lots of shows. And I think it's a great thing to win a bunch of Olympias, but it's also a great thing to be there for the fans and show yourself to the fans as much as possible. And I think this is something Samson had kind of started last year and the year before in competing more often. And I think people like seeing the guys compete more often. I think Derek is following suit, and I think it's great. I think it should be a common trend. I hope more guys do it. I hope, we're going to see Nick compete in one or two shows before the Olympia. I think we're going to have to see Andrew compete again. And the nice thing is for these guys is there are a bunch of big shows for them to do it at. There's Pittsburgh now, there's the Dubai Muscle Show, and all the shows, or a lot of the shows, including Detroit, which is our show, have increased prize money. So there isn't too many $10,000 shows anymore. We're doing $30,000 for first place. So all of the shows have elevated their prize money, and I think the bodybuilders are doing the same, and that they want to compete more often at these shows. And I think it's awesome for the sport. Like, look at even Martin. Martin's already qualified for the Olympia, but Martin's going to jump into Pittsburgh. And, if Nick doesn't win this show, he's going to have to do New York. Maybe he's going to do New York anyways. Martin's already qualified. Derek's already qualified. So they don't have to go on and do other shows. But if Nick doesn't pull this show out, he's going to have to go on and compete. Now, my thoughts aside from that, as far as Derek competing and whether it's great or not, which I obviously think it is, aside, just to touch on the show itself, it would stand to reason that this is Derek's show to lose. Okay, that's first and foremost. We got to give. If you guys hear the dog, I'm sorry. I got to babysit the boys today. It would stand to reason. Derek is a former Mr. Olympia. Derek just beat Samson at the Arnold. And I think he really found a great look at the Arnold, a more balanced physique with his trademark conditioning. And he is a professional. Like, he crosses all the T's and dots all the I's. And I will expect Derek to show up at Pittsburgh the same way he showed up at the Arnold. And if that package shows up, it's going to be very tough for Martin or Nick or Veto or any of the guys that you guys think may be at the very top to beat Derek. That being said, Nick is a freak. Nick looks like his legs are bigger. And if his legs do come in full, he will be more balanced. If he brings in a balanced package with trademark Walker conditioning from the earlier years, that freak factor could lend itself to something, like he's got a great back his entire backside, back double bicep, back lat spread, especially from the waist down, is much better than Derek's. His glute, hamstring, calf, setup, adductor, all from the back is better than Derek's. Derek's back is better than Nick's back. So they kind of trade in that area. Side shots, it's very hard to beat Nick in the side shots. He's very, very thick. He's got a huge side leg, very, very big arms. So that's another tough area. But then you got the front shots, and I think Derek obviously will win the front shots. He's got a very, very good V-taper, tiny waist. He's got all the aesthetics from the front that you kind of need. So, and then you have the overall package. You know, does Derek look better overall? So it's Derek's show to lose, but Nick has a lot of strong points. And then you have to add in Martin. Martin stood next to Derek on the Olympia stage last year and competed very well. Like, he was very competitive with Derek. Some people I was sitting with even had Martin winning a few shots. Now, that wasn't the best Derek. That wasn't the Derek from the Arnold. But Martin has also gotten a lot better. So what we saw at the Olympia with Martin looks to be 5 pounds heavier, like actual tissue heavier. So that's a lot on somebody who's only, I think Martin's like 5'7", 5'8". So that 5 pounds is really going to show. And I don't know, that's going to be a really interesting battle, because now Martin, I think, actually has better shape than Derek and is much more balanced. Does he have as crazy a V-taper? Maybe not. Derek is very wide, and he's got great lats, and it flows into a very, what looks like a very small waist with that illusion because his shoulders are so wide. But Martin being so balanced and not having really any weak points creates a very, very aesthetic shape, and his conditioning can get really gnarly. We haven't seen the extreme, like, onion skin from Martin in a couple of years, but the peak has been perfect for him. So if he can get that peak just right with a little bit sharper conditioning than we've seen the last couple shows, I'm really excited to see those guys stand next to Derek. And then the wild card is Veto. And I know a lot of people are counting Veto out, but I'm not. I think Veto has just as good a chance of winning this show as anybody else. Is he a little bit weaker in the back itself? Not the hamstring necessarily, the back. I think his back double bicep is probably the weakest of the three guys I just mentioned. I think his lower body is probably better than the other three guys I mentioned. The problem that Vito's going to run into is his posing is probably the weakest of the four guys. And I don't think Veto does himself any favors in the way he poses. He doesn't present all of that muscle, because Veto actually has pretty good shape. Like, he has a pretty good waist. He has a pretty good taper. He's got great arms, great chest. His back, even though it doesn't sink into his hips, is pretty developed, and he's got phenomenal legs. But the way he presents himself is not on par with the way Martin, Derek, and Nick present their physiques. I don't think Veto accentuates his physique. I actually think he does the reverse. I actually think he takes away from how nice his physique actually is. So if he can make a few posing tweaks, and he can, I think just a few posing tweaks, and he can stand with these guys and potentially win. Like, I don't know, in the back shots, he's going to suffer a little bit. But side shots, front shots, I mean, you got to remember, he only lost to Martin by 1 point last year. It was very close. And that was with bad posing. So if there's good posing, does that mean now he compares better with Martin? Now, is it a draw? Does he beat Martin? Does he beat Nick? Does he beat Derek? Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Veto could shock a lot of people. I just think it's going to take some work on his posing first, and then we can see. But he's going to be in condition. And he's going to have a lot of muscle. So it comes down to, can he present it as good as the other three guys? So again, I don't know what the order of the guys is going to be. I think it's a very, very interesting top four. There's probably other guys I'm forgetting that are coming into the show that are going to be very good. I know Crizzo's doing the show, but those are the four guys I see as the front runners right now. And I could make a case for any one of them winning, but I do think it's Derek's show to lose. Seeing as he just beat Samson at the Arnold, and he's kind of found a really good balance to his physique. So those are my thoughts on Derek doing the Pittsburgh show. And I'm excited for that show. We will be there. Hostile will have a booth at the Pittsburgh show. Samson will be at the booth. Martin will be at the booth on the Sunday because he's competing, so Brian won't be there on the Saturday. Ben will be there. I will be there. Paul will be there. We're all going to be there. So I hope to see you guys at the Hostile booth and meet you guys, shake your hands and all that. Moving on with some questions here. Christel7 says, do you think Sergio will qualify for the Olympia? I don't know who he's competing against, but I don't see why not. Sergio has a very nice physique. I've always been a fan of his physique. I feel like the most recent pictures that he's put out looks like he's filled in a few of the gaps. And I think Sergio, when focused with the right coach, is a very dangerous bodybuilder. So I do think he can qualify. It depends on the shows he chooses and who his competition is. I can't say for sure because I don't know who he's competing against. But if I had to bet that Sergio will be at the Olympia this year, I think I would say yes. Love it. Anything you do, man. Keep it up. Thank you very much. The girl and her cat says, what's the fondest memory with your wife? Wow, that's a really personal one. My fondest memory with my wife would have to be the trip we took to I have to say the trip we took to Saint Martin. Me and my wife went to Saint Martin for a guest posing appearance I had, but we stayed for a few days after. And that's actually where I proposed to my wife. And it was just a really, really good time. I did the first day, I think I did a guest posing, or second day. I guest posed. It was great. The audience was awesome. We met a lot of nice people. And then the rest of the time there, we spent going to different restaurants. We had a couple people there that we knew that were kind of showing us around. They took us to a few different restaurants that were all awesome. We went boating. We went like jet skiing. We did all this fun stuff. So it was just a really nice trip. And I proposed to my wife on that trip, and we got married soon after that. And yeah, it was, the reason it took me a second to think about it was, I think the other fond memory was going to Dubai with my wife. We went to Dubai a couple of years ago. We hadn't gone on vacation in like 6 or 7 years, and we really needed it. And we went away, and we just had a great time doing a bunch of different things there, like off-roading and jet skiing and just all these different things, sightseeing. So I would have to say the fondest moments are when we can get away from our work and actually just spend time together having some fun. Will you and the boys be the official Detroit Pro commentators? Last year I had Ian and Seth do it. I hope to have them doing it again this year. I might join them, but if not, I hope to have Ian and Seth sitting in the box for Classic and Pro divisions so they can commentate and give their points of view, because who better than two guys that have been around for 20 years? Joseba says, what gives you the feeling of fulfillment? Feeling of fulfillment for me comes from my work and my success. So, a lot of people my age have kids, and I think a lot of them garner their level of fulfillment in life from their kids. They probably, it would stand to reason. I don't know this for sure, but it would stand to reason that if you had kids, you would watch your kids grow up, and that would be your sense of fulfillment. But for me, I don't have kids, so my sense of fulfillment comes from providing for my wife and my work and my success in that regard, and making sure that every day when I wake up, I'm doing the things I need to do to keep moving myself forward and keep, these things that I'm building are kind of their work, and yes, I'm making money and a salary, but they are passion projects. Like HOSSTILE is not just a business. If it was just a business, the formulas might not be as built up, and we would probably be cutting a few corners here and there so we could make more money and this and that. So it's almost like everything I'm doing, whether it be the promoting the Detroit Pro or the Hostile or the clothing or whatever it is whatever it is that I'm trying to do success wise, or the Real Bodybuilding Podcast website, all these things, they're kind of all fun for me. They're all kind of all passion projects, and I want to elevate them so that's kind of where I get my fulfillment from. That's kind of my project every day, is to wake up and see how much can I elevate these things? How much can I give back to people and have them enjoy it and have the things that I'm doing really be beneficial? And a lot of the fulfillment comes from people actually using your stuff. Like when you take your time and you build something, you put together products and you build out this entire company, and then you put it forward for people to try, and they try it and they like it. That's very fulfilling, because you're like, you know what? That's the stuff that was up here. It was in my head. I wanted to put this formula together. I wanted to put this product together. I wanted to put the look of this thing together. I wanted to build out this clothing line, and people enjoy it. And the fact that people enjoy it is very, very fulfilling to me. And it's the same thing as like the fantasy league and the predictions and the podcast, all of these things that people enjoy. They message me and they say how much they love it, or how much they love the products, or how much fun they're having with the fantasy league or whatever. These are all things that are very, very fulfilling to me, because I'm like, okay, that means the things that I'm doing, people are enjoying and they're having fun with it, and it's giving them some type of benefit in some way, and it makes me want to keep doing it. So I guess that's where I would get my fulfillment from every day. Who's in your workout playlist? That's a good one. I love music. I have music for everything. I have different categories of music for riding my motorcycle, going on road trips in my car, working out. For working out, lately it's been a little bit weird. I've had some old grunge in there, like Alice in Chains. I had some Our Lady Peace has been in there. I don't even know if you consider that grunge. I've been listening to some old shit like Silverchair. But usually it's Metallica, Disturbed, uh, Rage Against the Machine, Led Zeppelin. These are kind of the bands I gravitate. Korn. These are kind of the bands I gravitate towards. Um, and then there's some rap thrown in. I think 75% of the time work out to rock, and then 25% of the time it's rap. So you find like Ice Cube, 50 Cent, um, Tupac, Biggie are obvious ones. Usually for me, it's 90s rap. I don't listen to a lot of new rap. So that's kind of my playlist. It's a lot of 90s and 2000s bands that I still listen to this day. Um, Honest opinion on the Pittsburgh Pro. I already kind of covered that. Give a quick story about each coach you've worked with. All the notable ones. So Chad Nicholls, the I shouldn't tell this fucking story. I don't think he'd mind. The most note that I'm there's probably more important stories, but this one just popped into my head, so I'm going to say it because it's the very first one. Um, I was getting ready for the Olympia. It was my first time I qualified for the Olympia, and um, Chad had come to see me in my room, and he took a look at me, and he's like, "Okay, this is what we're going to do Friday. This is what we're going to do Saturday, and here's a baggie." And he gave me this baggie with powder in it, and I don't even know what was in it. I don't even know. I think it was a mix of like quinine sulfate, which is a anti-cramping agent, I guess you could call it, and diuretics of some sort. I think it was like Demodex or something else, which are pretty intense diuretics. I don't know for sure. I didn't even ask. I didn't even ask him. And this is, I'm 20 fucking 8. So I don't care what's in the bag. He told me to take it, so I'm going to take it. It's kind of like that mentality at that time. He just dropped the baggie on the coffee table and he's like, take that at this time, blah, blah, blah. And he fucked off. And that was Chad. Chad was very sure of himself. And I always had total confidence in whatever he was doing. So that's why when he dropped the bag, I was like, doing the bag. That's it. And usually, the funny thing about Chad is every time he said something was going to happen, it usually happened. Like he would change something in my diet and say, "You're going to wake up 3 pounds heavier, or you're going to wake up 3 pounds lighter, or you're going to whatever." And like clockwork, it was always like bang on. So I had a lot of confidence in Chad. So when he said take something, I took it. And do now, ask later, I guess is kind of how I approach things with Chad. With Hany, uh, what's the very biggest memory? One of the best memories I remember from Hany, we were backstage at the Flex Pro in 2011, and this is, I think, our third show we had done together. We did two shows back to back, I think the previous year, and I was okay. I wasn't a great bodybuilder. Like I don't think I had really filled out my physique at that point. And so we did those two shows, and then Chad was like, I want you to take, or not Chad, sorry, Hany was like, I want you to take a year off. So I took a year off, and then we got ready for the Flex Pro. I remember him fucking riding me that entire prep, not in a bad way, but he would just call me almost every day. Hey man, how's your training? Did you get your cardio in? How's it? Not as much like a babysitter, but more like just I'm on top of it. Like we're making sure we're going to do this together. We're going to crush this shit. And I end up, the memory comes in just before I went on stage. I'd never had, to that point, I'd never had a coach with me at a show. Even though I'd worked with Chad for 3 years, mine and Chad's correspondence, even at the Olympia, he was there at the Olympia, but he was kind of like more with Dennis Wolf and Dennis James, who were placing at the very top at that time. So I understood. But I had never really had a coach with me backstage ever to this point. And Hany was backstage with me. We were at the Flex Pro. And I just remember him going, it was the way he said it. It's not going to come across the same, but it was the way he said it. He's like, go out there and fucking attack this shit. Like, just go fucking do it. And it was just the way he said it kind of really amped me up. And I guess the story is not really about what he said. It's more just about the way Hany is. Hany's biggest, everybody wants to know Hany's secret. Hany's biggest quality as a coach is knowing exactly what buttons to push with what athlete at what time. The same button doesn't work. Let's take me, for example, or take any athlete. The same buttons you push don't work throughout the entire year. There are different buttons you push at different times to elicit different responses. And Hany's quality or secret, if you want to call it that, is knowing exactly what buttons to push at what time to get the best out of his athletes. And I think that's when you ask me what I think of the most when I think of Hany, that's the first thing to come to mind. Because it's funny, sometimes I'd be talking to him and I knew he was fucking with me. I knew he was saying something to get a response out of me, to get me to do something, to get me to work harder, to get me to diet harder. But even though he's doing it, you still want to do it. So that was probably the biggest quality I got from, or the biggest thing I remember about Hany. When it comes to John, there are so many fucking things. John was like a mentor fucking to me. I think the biggest thing I remember about John is the amount of fun he liked to have, even during peak week. I remember him cracking jokes. He sat in a fucking sauna for like 9 fucking hours before, I can't remember if it was Tampa or what show it was, to make weight. I have a picture of him sitting in the bathroom that they made into a sauna in a like a sauna suit, like shirt. And he's just beet red. His hair's all fucked up. And he's dropped like 9 pounds in a night trying to make it to the 212 class. He just, I don't know, man. John was humble. What I remember most, humble, able to say I don't know, even though he was like the coach of coaches and fucking wrote books and fucking knew everything about everything. I guess what I would remember most about my specific prep, I don't have I don't think anything comes to mind off the top of my head about my prep, but comes to, well, actually, I should say one time I was staying at his house and I was getting ready. I can't remember what show I was getting ready for. I was staying at his house and the meal called for, I've told the story before on the podcast. The meal called for egg whites. And so I made some egg whites and I like ketchup on my egg whites. Well, John found out that I like a little more ketchup than I'm supposed to be using. So I made my egg whites. I put the ketchup all over them. And he's sitting there, he looks over, he goes, "Is that how much fucking ketchup you're always using?" I said, "Oh yeah, it's not that much." He goes, "That's a lot of fucking ketchup." He goes, "So your diet's basically ketchup and egg whites?" I go, "Pretty much." So we had a really good laugh about it, and it just became a running joke that we always talked about. But I think my most fondest memory of John was being in his basement as he got ready for the Arnold Classic. The Arnold Classic was his favorite show because he's from Ohio. And I think that was his dream, was to always to step on the Arnold Classic stage. And my fondest memory is me, Ken Jackson, and John were in his basement, and he had come to my shows previously in the previous year, and he saw my routine that I did at the Orlando Europa and at the Vancouver Pro. They were both done to, the song's called Heart of Courage. It's like a dramatic, you guys have probably heard it. If you type in Heart of Courage, I'm sure you've heard the song. And he loved the routine. He's like, "I want to do that exact same routine." So we tried to walk him through the routine. Me and Ken were both helping him. And he got most of it. He wasn't really like a dance inclined kind of person, right? So he didn't free pose that well, but he got it pretty good. And then we worked on it for like an hour, hour and a half, and we just had a lot of laughs. It was a lot of fun. And that's probably my fondest moment, is being at his house helping him with his posing for his show. It wasn't anything to do with me or my shows. But there are a lot of memories with John. John wasn't just a coach. He was a very close friend and a mentor and somebody I learned a lot about life from. And yeah. Anyway, moving on before I start fucking bawling my eyes out. Uh, let's see. If you had to pick one person to take over the podcast and lead the podcast in your absence, who would you pick and why? I think I would say Ian. Ian's been part of the podcast with me for, I want to say it's been like 200 or 300 episodes. I think I've done like 600 episodes total. Ian's been there for at least half of them. And I think Ian would do a very good job. I think we think a lot alike. I don't know. I don't know. He has a lot of opinions and he's not as inquisitive. So maybe that would be a problem. But I think between him and Paul asks a shitload of questions. So maybe it would be a tandem thing. You know, if something happened to me, God forbid, knock on wood, if something happened to me, I think I would like Paul because, you know, he's my best friend and Ian's also one of my best friends. I think Paul and Ian together would be very, very good because Paul is very curious and asks a fuckload of questions. And Ian is very, very smart and can articulate his opinions very, very well. So I think those two together would do a very good job of running the podcast. With Sassan's recent update, would you say he's the favorite to win Detroit? I don't think he's the favorite. Do I think he can win? Yes, I think he has the potential to win Detroit. I think he's very complete physique. It's very nice. Everything is in place top to bottom. I think he has a little bit of trouble posing his back double bicep. I don't know if he's corrected that or not. But I think William is the favorite to win the show. William was, I believe, eighth. I think eighth place at the Olympia. And I think he was just fourth. I want to say he was fourth at the Arnold. I don't remember if I don't know if I'm right, or maybe fifth. No, so I think he was fifth. Anyway, he was in the top callouts at the second callouts, sorry, at the Arnold. So I think out of everybody in the lineup, I think William is the favorite to win. I think Sassan can win. I think James can win. I think those three are probably the favorites to win the show. I think Carlos and Ron are wild cards to see what they look like on stage, but I believe the top three will be William, James, Sassan, or William, Sassan, James. I think that's kind of the order of the top three, in my opinion. But like I said, Carlos and Ron are big wild cards. Justin Wyatt is also doing his pro debut. Aaron Gawley's been working really, really hard on his legs. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting show. I'm excited to see how it pans out this weekend. Um, you and Paul Lozon are really tight buddies. How did you meet and become friends? We met at the gym. I think Paul saw me posing in the locker room one day after my workout, and I think I was talking some shit because I was a cocky little asshole, and I was saying something about going pro, and Paul was like, whatever. He didn't say it because Paul's too nice. But I think in his head, the way he tells the story, he's like, whatever, this guy's never going to turn pro. Anyway, I don't remember how we did it. He used to bounce at one of the strip clubs here in the city, and I think I worked there really briefly, and we kind of crossed paths there a little bit. And I know his girlfriend used to work there, so I was like, I'll watch your girlfriend, don't worry. Not like actually like watch her, but like like take care of her. I tell him now I was watching her just to piss him off. But anyway, no, so I don't know. I don't really know exactly like what the meeting point was, but we had just crossed paths a few times, and then I was like, let's train together. So we started training together. Then I started training him. And I don't know, when you sweat and bleed and get injured and you have successes and failures and all these things happen for years on end, you just develop a really, really tight bond, man. And it's not, Paul's been there through all the ups and all the fucking downs. I've been there with him, through the birth of his kids, to getting married, to the shows he won, the shows he didn't win. Like, we've just been there for each other through all of the good stuff and the bad stuff. And I think when that happens, especially the bad stuff, when you're there for somebody in their darkest moment, you build a stronger bond, I think. I think it's easy to be there for people when they're doing fucking great and they're riding high. I think the people that are around you when you're in your darkest times are the people that you develop real friendships with. And Paul's been that person for me. Taking my dad to the Detroit Pro for my first in-person bodybuilding competition. How do I get him just as excited as I am? He has no bodybuilding knowledge. That's a tough one, man. My family, usually people don't get interested in a show. And this kind of goes for every sport, because I watch like UFC and stuff, or when I used to watch football, or when I watch hockey. People get interested when they know the people competing. That's usually when people get interested in a sport. Like, yes, people who don't know fighters can watch a fight and still like appreciate the fighting. They can appreciate an MMA fight, a boxing match, whatever it is. But usually if they know the people fighting, they know their story, they know why they're there, they know what they're fighting for, whatever, it kind of makes the fight more enjoyable to watch. And I kind of think the same thing about bodybuilding. And that's part of the reason why I started the podcast. I think if you know James has a baby on the way, and James has been struggling with nailing that peak conditioning, and this is his time to bring it back, and he's got a new coach, and I think they figured it out, and it's going to be really interesting to see if he can finally step on stage at his best look ever. And William's getting a little bit older, but he's still got some gas in the tank, and he can probably pull out this win and qualify for the Olympia and get back to the Olympia one more time. And Sasan has stepped away for a year or two, and now he's coming back, and he looks phenomenal, and he might beat both these guys and kind of shock everybody. So like, there's some little storylines in there that are exciting for people, but they're more exciting if you know the athlete, you know their personality, you've heard them speak. For people who don't know, it's hard to get people excited for bodybuilding. Like, I'll be honest with you, my family, I love them all. They came to some of my shows. They don't give a shit. They just wanted to see, you want to see the people that you know. So they knew me. They were excited when I was on stage. They didn't really care about watching anybody else on stage. And I think that goes for a lot of people when it comes to bodybuilding, mostly because you don't really know what you're looking at. Your dad is going to sit in the audience and go, they all look huge. They all look humongous. They all look shredded. They all look phenomenal. That's what he's going to say. Because unless you've watched bodybuilding for a little bit of time, you don't really, you kind of miss some of the intricacies and the differences in size or differences in shape or differences in condition. Those things are hard to see for a first-time bodybuilder. So if I was going to try and get my dad excited, I would just say, look, you're going to see some fucking freaks. You're going to see guys bigger than you've ever seen before, and it's crazy. It's freakish. It's really impressive to see, And I just wait for them to come out. You're going to see guys that weigh 250 pounds that have zero body fat. Just tell them zero body fat. They're to the average person, these guys look like they have zero body fat. So that's really the only way to get people excited. It's to either know the athletes competing or just to kind of push the freak factor and how exciting it is to see. Because to be honest, the average person has never seen a pro bodybuilder in real life. And when you do, it is a little bit shocking. You're like, holy fuck, that's really, really impressive. Like, all the drugs aside or whatever, like all the bullshit people talk about, it's still really shocking to see in person. And you're like, that's a lot of fucking muscle for a person to be carrying around. So I think it'll be impressive for your dad to see in person. I think he'll look at it, whether he's grossed out by it or appreciates it or whatever, it'll be interesting to him one way or another. Framework says, would you rather buy a custom bike that's already done or build one from scratch? Well, I'm currently building one from scratch, and although it's fun, I'm really impatient and it costs a lot of money. And if I had to do it all over again, I would probably buy a stock bike, take it to a custom builder and say, here's a few of the things I like, build it for me and just give it back to me when it's finished. I don't know, because I'll put it this way. I don't have enough money to just take my bike to Harley and go, here's $40,000, do all of these things. So for me, it's like, it's more a matter of, here's $5,000 here, here's $2,000 there, here's 1,000 here, and you kind of build the bike up. But I've had the bike for 2 years. Well, your taste kind of changes, or new things come out, or new bikes come out. So what happens is you start building this bike, and you kind of almost got it to where it's done. And then like a new bike is released, and you're like, fuck, now I want the new bike. I want that new thing. And you're working on the old thing still. So I really love my motorcycles. I don't regret anything, but if I could just if I had the money to just hand over a check and go build it, finish it, and give it back to me, I'd rather do that. I don't know if you guys can hear the dog snoring. Fuck, he's loud. Would Mike Sommerfeld from the Arnold edge out Chris at this year's Olympia? No, I don't think, and that's again my personal opinion. I don't want to get into the classic conversation. I just Chris's physique is a once in a lifetime physique. To me, it's rare. It's very rare to see somebody that big and still be able to make weight with that bone structure. I don't know if we're going to see that again anytime soon. And I think Chris at his best is still better than everybody in classic. But that's just my 2 cents. Okay, let's see here. Will you ever make another Bro Chat funny moments? I have rewatched them so many times. They're always great to watch. Yeah, I'm sure we'll do something like that. Sarah says, since many people seem to know you more from your post-retirement career, I'd love it for you to share your journey as an athlete when you started, your first shows, emotions prep, approaches, the connections you made along the way. I know we get bits of that during the pod, but I think it would be great. We love your work. That's a really long answer. That's the problem, is if I'm going to go through my entire career, that's like a whole, that's a video in itself. I'll go through really quickly. I started bodybuilding at 20. It took me 7 years to turn pro. I won my class 3 times at the Canadian Nationals, but I didn't get my pro card until the third time. The third time I won the overall. I won 2 pro shows. I took a bunch of second places that I think should have been first, but everybody who places second thinks they should have been first. So I don't know how much that means. I qualified for 4 Olympias. I only did 1. That's a regret that I have. I wish I would have done all 4, regardless of where I placed. I wish I would have done all 4. I did 4 Arnold Classics. I never peaked at any of the Arnold Classics I did or the Olympia. I struggled with anxiety through most of my pro career, which I think hindered my ability to perform the way I should have. I wanted to bodybuild as a... Oh, my dog is moving my camera. Oh my God. Can you get out of there, buddy? Can you not lay by the camera like that? Like, you're ruining my shot, dude. Here, let me see if I can put this back. Here, wait. There we go. Wait, almost. Okay. Sorry, guys. Um, so yeah, where was I? Look, ultimately, this is what you have to know. I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I wanted to make a living as a bodybuilder, and I did do that. Did I ascend to the highest levels of bodybuilding? No. When I look back, do I think I could have? Yes. I think I had a physique that could have been an elite physique. I might have gone about putting on size the wrong way to I kind of ruined my lines that maybe took me out of the running to be in that elite group. But do I have any regrets other than those Olympias and not doing them? Not really. I never really started bodybuilding thinking I was going to be Mr. Olympia. I just wanted to bodybuild for a living. I love training. And I was like, I want to do something that will allow me to make money so I can just train. I just want to train. I want to train and I want to get paid for it. And when I think of it in that regard, I have zero regrets because I was able to make a really good living just lifting weights and just competing. And that's really special because not a lot of people get to do that. And I'm very thankful that I was able to make a career out of that. And from that came the podcast, came the career, came all that. So my career was, I enjoyed every minute of it. I'm not going to go through all of it because, again, that's a very, very long video with a lot of twists and turns. But maybe one day I'll do a video and just kind of chronically go through the history of where I competed, where I placed, how I looked, some of the ups and downs of those shows. But it's like I said, it's a very long answer, so I'm gonna kind of leave that one there. Let's see. Let's scroll down a little bit here. Thoughts on already Olympia qualified athletes doing Olympia qualification shows? Does it take away from potential depth of Olympia lineup? No, I don't think we can have it both ways. I don't think we can sit at home and complain that the top guys don't compete, and then complain when they do compete because they're taking away placings. I think if Samson wants to compete at every single show and take away every single qualification from everybody and walk back into the Olympic stage with 5 guys competing and win, that's his prerogative. These guys are doing a job. This is not, we don't feel bad for the guy that didn't win. If somebody shows up and they're better than you, that's too bad for you. Pick a different show. If Derek decides to do Pittsburgh and Nick doesn't win, let's say Nick was going to win. Let's say, not that I'm saying he could have beat Martin. Maybe he can beat Martin. Maybe he can't beat Martin. Maybe he can beat Veto. I don't know. Let's just hypothetically say he was going to win. If Derek shows up and takes that away from him, too bad. You're going to have to go to New York. And if Derek goes to New York, you're going to have to go to California. And if Derek goes to California, you're going to go have to Toronto. And that's if Derek beats him, right? But I think that's great. I think that's great. I think it means everybody's got to compete more because you know what? If the best guys in the world are showing up to more shows, then that means shows like Detroit, shows like Toronto, shows like Chicago, shows like Vancouver, all of these smaller shows are going to get even bigger lineups too. And it just means everybody's going to have to compete more, which is great for the fans and great for the sport. Now, the only caveat I would say to this whole thing that is not good is I would hope to God that all of these athletes are getting blood work done a couple times a year because we don't want them competing at the expense of their health. But solely as a fan of the sport, I don't think it's wrong at all for anybody who's qualified to compete. I think if they compete and they can spank some ass, the rest of the guys got to go somewhere else to get their qualification, and everybody benefits. The fans benefit, all the show promoters benefit, the athletes benefit. It's just good all around for these guys to get on stage more and present themselves more. And when I say the athlete benefits, some of you may say, well, the athlete doesn't benefit. They're going to have to diet multiple times a year. I promise you that athlete will benefit because one, they're going to learn to prep better. They're going to learn to get in shape better. And even if it kind of hurts them because they prep too much, you got to think of this too. This is a business. And the guys who compete more will make more money, whether it's because they shot more YouTube videos because they were in prep, because they built their fan base more because they got on stage more often, Maybe the sponsors are happier and they're paying them more bonuses because you're competing more often. These are all benefits to competing more often. So no, I don't think it's wrong for Olympia qualified athletes to compete, whether they take somebody's spot or not. That spot's not guaranteed for you, man. If you can't get it, you got to go somewhere else and get it. And that's all kind of all there is to it. Tough love. Um, let's see. What was the worst mixing protein powder that you ever had, but it actually tastes good? I don't even know. Some of the old school shit I used to use, like there was a Pro Lab, there was a, there was a, there was a, oh, what was it called? It was a like a weight gainer fucking shake. I think it was Pro Lab N large. It was the letter N dash large. I used to drink that shit after my workout. It was like 100 grams of sugar or some shit in a serving, and it barely would mix, but it tasted so good. Obviously, because there's like so much sugar in it that it tasted awesome. But that was yeah. There's not nowadays. Protein powders are kind of like they're made in such a way, at least if you buy a good one, that they mix very well. Back in the day, that used to be a selling point because most protein powders mixed like shit. So when you got a good one that mixed well, you would see it like advertised, like mixes so well. You don't see that anymore because every protein powder mixes well. So that's kind of a sign of the times, like that you don't see anymore. Um, okay, let's see. This is interesting. What's the most nervous you've ever seen Paul in a situation? Prayers not included. Most nervous I've ever seen Paul. Paul hates public speaking. He's getting better at it, but I think the most nervous I've ever seen Paul. We've been promoting shows for 15 years. And at the start of every show, me and Paul will come out, or now Detroit, it's me, Paul, and Ben. But we'll come out and we'll kind of open the show. Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. We have a great show for you. We really appreciate you coming to the show. Blah, 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 blah. So I'll usually say a few words first, and then I'll say, and Paul, Paul, do you have anything you want to add? And or sometimes I think there was one time where I threw a curveball and I was like, Paul, why don't you start? And he just, you could see it in his face. He's just like, fuck. So he gets really nervous. He's gotten better over the years though. This is 15 years ago. So he's had 15 years to practice. Plus he's doing a lot of head judging things now. So he's on the microphone a little bit more. And he's kind of a little bit more comfortable now, but that was the most nervous I'd seen Paul. Public speaking is probably not his favorite thing. On average, how much scale weight did you lose on prep? Does the number differ when you were an amateur versus when you were a pro? Yes. Well, yes. As an amateur, earlier on in my career, I used to believe in the seafood diet. Not seafood as in SEA food, more SEE food, which is whatever the fuck I could see, I was eating to get as big as I could. And I remember one prep in particular, I think it was my second show I ever did. I lost 80 pounds in that prep. I got all the way up to 282 pounds. I looked like a slob, but I thought I was big. I'm like, oh, I'm fucking 280. Looking back now, like, what an asshole. I lost 80 pounds for that prep. I was almost hallucinating by the time that prep was over. It was 22 weeks long, and it was a nightmare. So that was the most I ever lost. On average, as an amateur, probably 50 pounds, which is still a lot. As a pro, I would say 30 to 40. Usually 40 was the average. And the reason I say 30 to 40 as a pro and is it being less is when you get big, like when I hit 30, 31, 32, it's probably the most size I ever put on. I didn't really put on much size after that. Like, I think at 31, I was 250 pounds on stage. I think 5 years later, I was 260 on stage. So I put on a little bit more muscle in that 5 years. But for the most part, I was always between 250 and 260 on stage. And when you're that big, yeah, I would shoot up to 290 or 300 pounds in the off season. But it didn't really feel like you were still, like you would lose a lot of water weight too when you're that big. Like when I would lose 50 pounds in a prep as an amateur, it felt like 50 pounds of fat. Like you could feel yourself getting skinnier and really like thinning out your skin, and like everything really was getting tighter and tighter, tighter. When you're 290 and you get to 260 or even 250, yes, it's less weight. I know it's 30 pounds instead of 50 or 40 pounds instead of 50, but it still didn't even feel, you just have so much muscle that you don't actually have that, like, it feels like you have less fat to lose and more water. So, because you lose water from inside the muscle, you lose water from outside the muscle, you lose fat, you also lose intracellular fat. So, I would say there's obviously less fat to lose as because it was also harder to put on fat. Like it's harder to get fat when you weigh 260 pounds lean. Like if your stage weight is 260 pounds of lean mass, 4,000 calories a day is just breaking even. Like I'm probably losing weight at 4,000 calories. I got to eat 4,500, 5,000 calories a day just to maintain the 260. So when you're trying to put on weight in the off season, I'd have to eat 5,500, 6,000, 6,500 calories a day consistently. And that's when you'd start to put on weight. 5,500 calories, 6,000 calories usually. And you'd start to put on some weight and get up to, so that it becomes very hard to do that every day. And it becomes very hard to put on a ton of fat because who wants to eat 6,000 calories every day? So you would eat closer to your maintenance because you couldn't really just pack it all in. When you're growing and your lean body mass is like 210 and you're eating 5,000 calories, well, now you're like in a 3,000 calorie or 2,000 calorie surplus. So you're packing on that fat pretty easily, you know what I mean? And you think you're doing the right thing. Maybe not now. Now bulking is a little less popular than it was back then. And you would just keep eating and it would be no fucking problem because, you know, eating 4,000 or 5,000 calories is not hard for me, but I didn't have the muscle mass to support it. So I just got fat. When you're 250, 260 on stage and you pack that food in, a lot of it goes to just rebuilding the muscle. So you don't gain as much fat that way. What's the biggest flaw with the current generation of bodybuilders? Interesting. What's the biggest flaw in the current generation? I don't know. You know, I don't like to disparage the guys. You know, these guys are fucking working hard. I give opinions on physiques on the show and stuff, but as a whole, I have a lot of respect for bodybuilders because I've been through it and I know what they're going through. And I've been through the social media shit. I've been through the judging shit. I've been through the injuries. I've been through the contract losses and gains. I've been through all of it. So, you know what? I don't want to say that they're doing anything wrong. These guys are working their fucking asses off to make a living doing something they love. They are competing as much as they can. And I think they're managing a social media world that is very difficult. I think a lot of them have YouTube channels and are really trying to promote themselves well. I think a lot of them have 3, 4, 5 sponsors and are really trying to manage those, which is also difficult. I don't really have anything bad to say, or not bad, or it doesn't even have to be bad to leave a constructive criticism, but I can't even think of a constructive criticism that I would say that the bodybuilders as a whole, like as a generation, need to do better. I think these guys are great. I think bodybuilding has really come back around in a positive way from my era. Like my era was the mass era. My era was get big at all fucking costs. It doesn't matter if your waist gets blown out. Doesn't matter. Nobody gives a shit about aesthetics. Just get fucking huge. And a lot of guys did that, including me. And then this era, something happened. And they're like, no. We need the guys to look good too. We can't just have them be fucking huge. You got to be huge and you got to look good. And these guys were like, yeah, we can do that. And they're doing it. Because if you look at all the top guys, they all are aesthetic, right? Even Nick as the mass monster is still working on his waist. That would have never happened in the fucking early 2000s. Yeah, we did abs, but nobody gave a shit. Nobody was like, yeah, your waist needs to be smaller. Like, people said it, but like nobody ever really felt like they were judged on it properly. Now it's a thing. Like, you will get marked down. In the past, if you were big enough, If you had enough muscle, you could have a thicker waist and be like, I don't care. I'm bigger than this fucking guy. I should beat him. And it would work. Now, if you're the biggest guy, but you don't have the right aesthetics, you're going to pay for it. And I think I commend the guys in this generation for changing the look back to what people wanted. I commend the guys for competing more. I commend the guys for having to deal with a very harsh social media landscape. I don't have anything. I don't have anything to say as far as like the guys from today's era. They are all fucking great as far as I'm concerned. Can you still compete in bodybuilding shows with loose skin if you have a good physique? You can, but you're not going to win if somebody else comes in with a good physique. Loose skin, unfortunately, is still, look, bodybuilding is a visual sport. So you may have 0% body fat, but if you have a pound of loose skin hanging off your stomach, it's visually unappealing. And that's why you get marked down for gyno. That's why you get marked down for loose skin. That's why you get marked down for bad injections shots, either from SEO or from anabolics that maybe lump up and don't look good. That's why you have to shave your body hair. That's why you have to fucking put on a tan. All these things are very visual and make your physique more appealing. Loose skin, unfortunately, and I hate to say it for people because I know it's not your fault. You've done something really good by losing body fat. Now you're left with this loose skin and you have to have it surgically removed. Unfortunately, bodybuilding is a very visual contest. It's about how appealing you can make your physique. And if you have the greatest physique on earth, but the next guy next to you has the same physique with no loose skin, that guy's going to win. So you would have to be like much better than the second place guy to get that loose skin to not be a problem. And then again, this is also degrees of loose skin. How much loose skin are we talking about? Is it like a bunch of rolls hanging off your stomach? Is it a little bit of loose skin in your back? Like, what are we talking about? So that also plays a part too. How much loose skin do you mean? Anytime, just think of it this way. Everybody has a standard of what is the most visually appealing thing as far as bodybuilding goes. I'm not talking about like beauty of the beholder, in the eye of the beholder, and like society or whatever. I'm talking about bodybuilding. Everybody has a standard of what a perfect bodybuilding physique looks like and what an appealing bodybuilding physique is. So let's just take Flex Wheeler, for example. That's what we're looking at. That's very nice muscle bellies. That's very good bone structure. That's perfect flow and balance. That's every muscle is in proportion. That's very tight skin. That's very low body fat. It's very good skin texture. All of these things are made to be visually appealing. So you're like, that physique is perfect. So anytime you see something that is visually unappealing or takes away from the appeal, that's why even like when people ask about tattoos, if you have too many tattoos, that will take away from the appeal of your physique. That's a problem. So that's kind of the easiest way to answer your question. If it's unappealing, it's going to be a problem. And that's again, only if it's tied, right? You can overcome unappealing things like maybe too many tattoos or like gyno or whatever, if you're hands down better than the second place guy. But if you're close, those things will hurt you. What is the Detroit competitor list? That should be out later today. J Sledge 75. We'll do a couple more and then we'll go. Says some pros and coaches kind of shit on Masters competitors still trying to turn pro. Your thoughts? See you this weekend. That's a tough one for me, man. I'm a little bit harsh on this. This is my answer. And this is, I don't, listen, everybody can do whatever they want with their own life. More power to you. My opinion about me personally and how I would coach somebody if they're asking me. When you take steroids, when you get into bodybuilding, when you decide to go down this road in this life, you are immediately shortening your life. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have some type of ailment. It's my belief, and this is just my belief, and I'm pretty sure there might be some science to back this up, but it's just my belief at this point that steroids will accelerate your life. When you're eating mass amounts of food and you're taking mass amounts of drugs, these things are all putting wear and tear on your body and speeding up your life. Like they're taking off years off the back end, right? So even with zero ailments, even with zero issues, even with perfect kidney health or whatever, perfect heart health, whatever, I believe, and this is again just my belief, that you are shortening your lifespan by putting yourself into this sport to begin with. So what I would say is, it's my opinion that you kind of want to limit how much of the shortening you're doing. So if you're already 40 years old and you're like, you know what, I'm going to compete for 10 more years, I guess I just look at it like, how much damage are you doing on the back end? Like, is it worth it? Like, is it really worth it to get a pro card as a masters competitor? Are you going to compete as a pro? Is it going to help you make a living? And always been very kind of black and white in this regard. Like, I don't think I would have competed if I couldn't have made a living at it. I don't think I would have ever taken steroids if I wasn't a competitor. So for me, it's kind of all very black and white. I would have never taken steroids recreationally, and I would have never competed and taken steroids if I didn't want to try and make a living at it, because there has to be some benefit to the risk. And I think that's kind of where my perspective is if you're a masters competitor, what is the benefit to the added risk? Is it just to be able to say I turned pro? Is it just to be able to say like, yes, I won a pro show or I won my pro card? I don't know if that's enough. That's kind of each person's individual desire. For me, it's not enough of an answer. Like that's not enough of a reward for me to take years off my life. And some people would say, even for me, some people say, well, it's not much of a reward for you. You took years off of your life and all you did was make money. Like that's not worth it either. That's what I'm saying. Everybody has to make their own decision as to what's worth it for them. For me, I understand why people compete in masters. I respect them. I hope they get their pro cards. I hope they're happy. I hope it makes them feel more fulfilled in their journey. I personally just wouldn't do it. And if I had clients that were doing it, and they asked my opinion, I would probably advise against it. I just don't know. Unless this person's perfectly healthy, I would just say, you know what, like maybe it's time. And I think everybody has to decide when their time is. And that's kind of it. It's a very personal decision, I think. Can you on Bro Chat or Bodybuilding and Bollocks have a section where you look at old training footage and stuff of the older generation of bodybuilding every week? Let's encourage that type of training and not this reps in reserve 2-minute stretch bullshit. Lavroni, Ronnie, etc. Be great. Adam, I wish that's the way it worked. There is hundreds of clips on TikTok and Instagram of old Ronnie clips and Kevin Lavroni clips and Jay Cutler clips. And invariably, all you see in the comment section is this generation saying they're doing it wrong. I don't think it matters how many Ronnie Coleman clips I show, how many Jay Cutler clips I show. This generation has decided that the textbook is the way to go. And the guys who are the biggest guys in the world are only big because they're lucky, because they have good genetics, and they all are stupid, and they don't know how to train, and they just got big because they took too many drugs, and they have great genetics. Nothing could be further from the truth. Many bodybuilders are very well thought out in their approach. I have a very strong disdain for people who call bodybuilders stupid, because they are not. They are very smart, and they are very in tune with their physiques and what their physique is doing. And when I say they're smart at their craft. They understand what they are doing, and that's the most important thing. And I would love to be able to I would love to be able to convince people that The biggest bodybuilders on earth are the ones that you should be following and the ones you should be listening to. But we just live in a very soundbite era, a very YouTube era where the all sorry guys, all of the authorities on bodybuilding are not the best bodybuilders. They're not the biggest, they're not the nicest physiques. They actually are, some of them are very ugly physiques. But because we live in a kind of bodybuilding nerd culture in this generation, people don't value the guys who've packed on mass amounts of muscle. And that used to be the prevailing thought was we would go, we would go find the biggest guy in the gym and we would be scared to talk to him. And eventually one of us would go talk to him, go talk to him, go talk to him. Okay. We go talk to him. Hey man, what are you doing? How'd you get that fucking big? Well, if they were nice enough, they would say, this is how I fucking train. This is how I fucking eat. This is what I take. This is how much cardio I do. And then you would sit there and go, okay, fuck, I'm going to try some of that. And you would try some of it and some of it would work really, really well. And eventually you would get fucking huge. What I see now is nerd culture and everybody's reading a textbook. Nobody's getting huge. The guys who are getting huge are still following the same fucking shit that we did. They're not, the textbook guys are not the guys getting huge. Sorry to tell you. The Nick Walkers of the world, the Samson Daudas, the fucking guys who are freaks, these guys are still doing the shit they were doing in the 90s. So, you guys tell me, like, I don't know how to convince the next generation, but I know it's not making them watch Ronnie videos because all they're going to say is, that's steroids and genetics. That guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's stupid. I'm done. I'm done trying to convince. I think everybody has to learn at their own rate. You don't know how many DMs I've gotten from people who are like, I was doing this approach that's very blah, 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 scientific. I didn't really make that much progress. I started doing some of the stuff you guys are talking about on the podcast. I'm starting to finally gain weight. I'm starting to finally get stronger. I think people just have to learn on their own. People are very, very convinced right now that the studies are the be all end all, and they're not convinced that the experience actually matters more, which I'm always trying to convey, but it's tough to kind of break through the noise right now because of all the TikToks and all the YouTubes. And when somebody cites a study and somebody's taken a kinesiology course or they're a master's in fucking biomechanics, it sounds really good. Hey, this guy's really smart. Everything he's saying makes sense. Oh, and it's backed by a study. I don't blame people for following that, but I also am a little bit shocked that when you see with your own fucking eyes, Samson Dauda, Derek Lunsford, Nick Walker, Martin Fitzwater, Hady, and you look at them and you go, oh, those guys don't know what the fuck they're doing. All their training's fucked up. And then you see a whole bunch of science guys who have horrible physiques and they're not natural. And people are like, well, that guy must have the answer. He sounds like he knows everything. I'm like, yeah, but that guy looks like that guy's actually got the muscle. This guy may sound like it, but that guy looks like it. So it's very confusing to me how the words mean more than what people are seeing with their own fucking eyes. If you watched Hady train, you'd be mortified. If this generation's bodybuilder watched Hady Chupan train, they would be like, what the fuck is that guy doing? That's what it takes. That's why he's a freak. I don't know how else to tell people, but that I can't stress it enough. Just look with your own eyes. Look at the biggest guys in the world and what they're doing. All of the people online are saying they're all doing it wrong. All of them. I've seen it on Samson's page. I've seen it on Derek's page. Go watch Derek Lunsford train back and go read the comment section. It's inevitably you're going to find, oh, he's swinging too much. Oh, he's going too fast. Oh, he's doing old school T-bar rows. That doesn't do shit. He should be using a cable station. And he's got the best back in the fucking league. You understand what I'm saying to you? Like, just look with your own eyes. But it doesn't sink in because that guy over there he's got a study that says that Derek's doing it wrong. Like, okay, all right. You do it that way, all you want. See what happens. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I just kind of went off on a tangent there, but I just it's very baffling to me what's happened with people in the industry and how much stock they put in a study and a textbook versus visually seeing the most impressive physiques in the world. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to wrap it there because that's a really, really nice rant to finish with. I like being angry, Fouad, sometimes. I hope you guys enjoyed the Q&A. I don't know how long it went, but I tried to get in as many as I could. I will be back for more if you guys enjoy the solo Q&As. I like doing them, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Guys, please, if you want to support me or support the channel, check out HOSSTILE.com. We have new protein coming out in about 2 weeks. I think you guys are going to love it. And we always have new clothing drops. So please check out HOSSTILE.com. Use code RBP if you want to save some money and support me, support the channel. Love you guys. Catch you on the next one.